Alright, Guardians, let me preface this with one very important statement. While this video is a bunch of recommendations that I would have for a day 1 raid team, I myself have yet to successfully complete a day 1 raid. Now I know that sounds kind of contradictory. Well, if you haven't completed one, how can you give us advice? Well, hear me out, I promise. I've participated in several day 1 raids and have a solid idea of what to expect and how they usually go. I also have several ideas that allow for some important optimization for day 1 raid attempts. I have some very bad experience from previous attempts and would like to share that with you and how you can make sure not to do that. With all that being stated, take most of what I have to say with a grain of salt. While there are other content creators, such as Datto most notably, who have made a video similar to this, and I highly recommend going and watching his video as well, I feel like I have some important stuff to say additionally. Before we get started, take a moment to subscribe, like this video if you aren't already. It only takes a moment for you to do that, but it helps me significantly. So please just go ahead and do that real quick. Alright, Guardians, let's start with the basics. The first thing you need to do is establish with your team what is the goal on day 1. Are you attempting to just clear the raid, or are you trying to win that raid race? Or maybe you just want to experience a day 1. You don't care how far you get, your team just wants to do it for fun. Totally fine. All of these are great goals, and I've done several of these different goals. My raid team this go around, we aren't going to be competing directly in the raid race. We want a day 1 clear. That is the most important thing to us. However, if we are moving at a good speed and we are in the race, we would love to participate. Now, establishing this goal with your team before you even completely decide on who is on the team 100% is very important. Making sure that everyone is on the same page of this goal. It'll help with the high stakes that may be felt by some of the members of the group, and will hopefully lower the tension of the group overall. These are very stressful moments for some teams, as seen by several day 1 attempts or even completions by some of the winners. Go and watch those videos and you'll see what I mean. The second thing that is very important and needs to be done by all players on the raid team is prepping for the new season and the new raid. Now, this prep extends from bounty hoarding all the way to the most efficient ways of leveling once the new season has dropped. Now, in order for your raid team to be successful, I highly recommend that the team is as prepared level-wise as possible. And this process starts right now. Now, while I don't have a video explaining all the things you need to be doing prepping for the new season, there are plenty of other content creators such as Clyde, Swetsicle, Datto yet again, that do a great job of explaining this. Go watch their videos and try and take as much of it to heart as possible and really work on it. If your team is well prepared, it'll make the raid seem a lot easier even with contest mode on. Now, moving on to some of the more advanced stuff. Next up, these things that I personally recommend working towards in the few weeks before the new season/raid is dropped. The first of these items is establishing solid communication skills through chaos and practice. And now this might sound a little out there, so let me explain what I mean. The best example I have is to run through all of the raids that are currently in D2. Now, this is if you and your team have the time to do so. I perfectly understand if you don't. Start by making sure that everyone is aware of all the mechanics of each raid and they know how they work in and out. If you do this, it'll allow for a better understanding of the game as a whole. Now, this is the precursor. Now, here's where the practice part really takes place. Now, working through the chaos is where the fun of this prep, or this part of the prep, begins, at least in my opinion. So what exactly do I mean? Well, during raid day, no matter how well prepared you and the members of your raid team are, you're going to be under some significant stress, especially if you have lofty goals set, such as winning the raid race, or even just a day 1 completion at times. And with this stress, it might make the player contribute to a negative atmosphere and overall hurt the team. By practicing chaos method in raids where mechanics are well known, but not directly assigning roles or specifically contributing in a direct manner, but rather up in the air and very abrupt, spur of the moment style of play, this allows for players to begin to accept the stress and practice running with the stress and not contributing to a negative atmosphere. Now, I know that's a very confusing paragraph to get through, and a lot of you guys still might be confused, so let me just give a very specific example. And this is one that a lot of you have probably participated in, and this is how easy it can be. It's my favorite example, and it's in the Deepstone Crypt. On the third encounter, or the Descent encounter, while you are not directly damaging Taniks, but there are 3 different roles that need to be filled. Now, these roles are constantly changing throughout the counter. However, even if you LFG, it is common practice to not designate specific roles ahead of time, but rather play in the moment. Now, this is practicing and working through the chaos. Just try it, and I believe that you'll find some benefit to this method in practice. It can be taken beyond just the Deepstone Crypt and that third encounter, and can be applied to a lot of different encounters throughout multiple raids. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Now, moving on to some less advanced things, but still things that you should try and get done. And the first of these is weapons. Now, this could be a whole separate video, and honestly, there are better content creators with a conclusive list that I would recommend. For example, Demon Joe France has some amazing videos on this stuff. So does Error. Rick Kakis, as much as some of you may not like to watch his videos, has some good stuff as well. However, I'm just going to list a few exotics, and by few, I mean definitive list of ones that I'm making my team hopefully have done and ready to go, but also some legendary weapons, types of legendary weapons that I may consider useful. Now, in the background right now, you're seeing me use a website called Destiny Recipes. This website is amazing for prep before seasons, but additionally, they've added this new feature just recently, showing some weapons that they recommend you having. Now, a lot of these weapons fall into categories that I think you need to be taking in on day 1 raid just to be safe, so I highly recommend using this checklist as well. For the exotics, your team should try and complete the catalysts, if the weapon has it, for these weapons as well. There's certain ones that, if you don't have the catalyst done, are more or less pointless and do not help at all. So if you don't have the catalyst for some of these, make sure you try and get them and complete them as soon as possible. A few of the catalysts, and I will tell you when and where on this list, are not technically accessible in the game as of right now. However, as soon as Witch Queen drops, they will become available yet again, and I'm recommending that your team picks them up and tries to complete them if at all possible. Let's start with some heavy exotic weapons. Tractor Cannon. This is purely for the debuff. Really, only one person on your team needs to have the catalyst and this weapon. Lament. Everyone on your team should have Lament. It is by far the best exotic sword, and honestly one of the best swords in the game, period. Whisper of the Worm. This is one of the weapons that Catalyst is not currently in the game. However, once you can get it with Witch Queen, if your team does not have it, I recommend that they go and farm for it, and everyone on your team has Whisper with the Catalyst complete. Sleeper with the Catalyst, very important. The Catalyst is available as of right now, which a lot of people are unsure of, but it is available right now, and I highly recommend that your team completes it. As Sleeper is competing directly with Galahorn as some of the best DPS options in the game right now, and as soon as Particle Deconstruction goes away, it still will be very good, so get your hands on it. Speaking of G-Horn, or Galahorn as you may all know it, go through Grasp of Avarice, complete it, and then turn around, finish the quest, go back in, get the Catalyst, complete the Catalyst. As long as one person has the Catalyst completed on your team, you are set. Acreus. Legend of Acreus is a exotic heavy shotgun. Now there is a catalyst that is tied to this. It is available in game, and I highly recommend that most of your team has this gun and the catalyst complete. The final heavy weapon that I'm going to recommend, and I'm sure some of you were asking where it was at earlier in the list, although this is in no particular order, is Anarchy. Farm Spoils of Conquest, purchase Anarchy. It still is very good. Please go and do that. Moving on to some kinetic weapons. We have things like Izanagi's with the catalyst, and you need to complete the catalyst. It makes Izanagi's very, very good. Witherhoard is another example of a weapon that could go both ways. It has a catalyst, and the catalyst makes it amazing. However, if you don't have the catalyst, it's not the end of the world. This is an ad clear weapon mainly. It can contribute to an additional DPS, but I highly recommend that most of your team has this weapon. Outbreak Perfected is the final kinetic weapon that I'm going to recommend that your team has, and with the catalyst, may I add, one of the ones that is being added with Witch Queen, as it is a kinetic and primary weapon that can deal actually a sizable amount of damage when multiple are put together. The only two energy weapons that I'm going to say you need to have our 4th Horseman with its Catalyst completed, which is also dropping with Witch Queen, and at least a single person on your team needs to have Divinity. Now, there are a handful of other exotic weapons that are highly recommended for day 1, and matter of fact, Destiny Recipe does a great job of showing off some of these weapons. These are just a few of the many that I recommend that your team has. Moving on to legendary categories that I think need to be filled. Now, these are just recommended categories, and these are also all on Destiny Recipes, and there are some that I think I may not have added, but let's jump into it. The very first and honestly one of the most important things ever is a Blinding Nades grenade launcher. They're all over the game, both kinetic and energy, and I highly recommend that you go out and get one. Additionally, we have legendary swords, most notably Falling Guillotine. Get these just in case we need them. As for some ad clear weapons, we want an ad clear SMG, an ad clear auto, an ad clear hand cannon such as Fatebringer or Palindrome perhaps, an ad clear bow, and an ad clear scout. As you may or may not have noticed, the reason Pulse Rifle and some of these others aren't listed is just in case we see champions in the raid, which I'm guaranteeing we'll see some, and these are more than likely going to be the champion. Well, 4 of these are the champion mods, and hand cannons are most likely going to be our unstoppable primary mod, so keep that in mind and get some of these. Moving past our ad clear weapons, I highly recommend that your team gets Rocket with Explosive Light or Lasting Impression, as if Gallahorn is the best damage option, the rest of your team will most likely be using legendary rockets. Additionally, your team needs to have double slugs. This could be as easy as a Heritage plus a first in last out, or even a Blasphemer in the kinetic slot. Take the time, get double slugs. Additionally, moving into snipers, there's 2 different kinds of snipers that I recommend having, and I am not going to go into much depth and highly recommend that you look elsewhere for this content, but get one that is suitable for burst damage and get one that is suitable for sustained damage. There is a big difference, and there are multiple different snipers for each category, both in kinetic and energy. Take the time and look for those. The very final one, and this is one that a lot of people have already filled, is a solid linear fusion rifle and a solid fusion rifle. Both of these are very pertinent right now. However, we've seen with the buff to linear fusions that they're actually not half bad, even without particle deconstruction, so keep that in mind going into next season. Now on to some of the more important things that you and your team should be doing outside of the game. This is game independent. Now, the second to the last of things that I'm going to recommend that you incorporate into your team is to work on a positive and constructive atmosphere for your team. Now, this is obviously something that can sometimes not be helped and is just stuck where it is, but having the time ahead of the raid to work on this will benefit you once you are in that day 1 raid experience. If you are constantly screaming at each other, then it will not be a raid that you're going to complete day 1. Speaking from personal experience, take the time to work with your team on having a positive atmosphere and encourage ideas to be shared. Don't talk over each other. This also includes accepting and owning up to when you make a mistake. Don't be that guy that claims, oh, it was just the game, it's not me. Fess up, claim the mistake, and move on. And if other people are saying, hey, why did you screw up again? Explain to them. If you guys can work around this common problem of, I didn't do anything wrong, it was the game, or I can't do this, it was the game. If you can work around that common problem, your team is going to stand a lot better chance at completing it day 1. Look at your health. Now, this is the very last of the things that I have to recommend, and arguably it's one of the most important pieces to the puzzle here. Take the time, meal plan around the raid, and I'm not talking junk food. Keep those potato chips and all that away. It's great, they're good, but eat something healthy. And Data's video here recommends eating a banana. I'm on very much the same thought. Get some fruit. Fully plan out meals, even if it is just a sandwich. Don't just microwave ramen every 4 hours when you're hungry, and don't just order that pizza every 4 hours when you're hungry. Take the time, plan out some healthy meals, and truly try your best to be a little bit healthier during the raid. Now, also, with eating, you need to be drinking. It's important to have a lot of fluid in you, especially as you get dehydrated relatively easy while playing video games. Now, this can be as simple as drinking a lot of water, but it also can be avoiding some of the sugary and caffeinated drinks. Now, at times, it's perfectly fine, especially if you are attempting a full 24 hours straight. Some caffeine may be necessary. Just don't overdo it. Now, with staying healthy, also take the time to incorporate breaks in order to eat and use the bathroom when needed. It's not great to just sit there for 24 hours straight and not do any of that, you know? Take the time, take a quick 5-minute break. Everyone goes to use the bathroom, everyone goes to get food. Relax. Don't just stare at the computer screen this entire time. Not eating, not taking breaks is something that is not healthy, and it might be holding you back. Incorporate breaks and ensure that your team is taking the time to properly fuel your body, and you may just see some improvement overall. Now that is all I have for recommendations on maintaining a healthy raid team for day 1. This list, I'm sure, isn't everything that could be applied, as I didn't even begin to talk about sleeping. However, it has a lot of useful tips and tricks that I've learned over the past few day 1 raid races that I've participated in. At the end of the day, even if you don't complete whatever goal your team is set out to complete in the raid, enjoy the experience of it, and just know that it is only a game. I truly hope that everyone here is able to complete whatever goals your raid team have set out to complete, and that overall, we enjoy the raid as a community, as Bungie would want us to. These day 1 raids are a blast, and if you haven't had an opportunity to participate, go out there, find a team, and make it happen. With that, I have nothing else to say, except for thank you for watching, and get back to grinding, you crazy guardians.